Hello everyone and welcome to Project Insights Project Management webinar. Topic for today is part 2 of 8 business EQ strategies. Just a few things to note before we get started. All participants will be put on mute. However, any questions you have are more than welcome. Please go ahead and type those into your question box that you can find on your GoToWebinar dashboard. We'll try to answer all of your questions during the session, but if we can't, we'll make sure to get to you through email before the end of the day. Also, please note this webinar recording and slides will be available within our Project Insight community. All of our PM training sessions are valid for 1 PDU free of charge. However, you must be in attendance for the full session. I will email you your PDU certificate by the end of today, so please hold off on emailing us about your certificate until then. And for all other PDU information, please feel free to visit our PI community, type in PDU in the search, and you will find the PMI rules in an article called Webinars and PDUs. My name is Denise, and I'll be your moderator for today. I'm on the marketing team here at Project Insight. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please feel free to reach me at denise.rodriguez@projectinsight.com. If you're not already familiar with Project Insight, we're a cloud-based project management solution. We work with two kinds of companies, those that are rapidly growing and need to scale the way they're managing their projects, and those who want greater visibility across their project portfolio, want more insight into the workloads of their resources, and want a better way to collaborate on their projects among team members. If any of these sound familiar to you, you would like to learn more, please feel free to contact us via phone, email, or of course you can always request your demo at projectinsight.net. Our host today will be Diane Buckley. Diane is the CEO of Core Performance Concepts. CPC helps companies by training team members in project management, PMP preparation, leadership, and business analysis. Diane has an MBA and a PMP and over 30 years of experience in the PM industry. Good morning, Diane.
Good morning, Ms. Denise. Good morning, Brenda. Hi, everybody.
Good morning.
And joining Diane will be our presenter, Brenda Williams. Brenda has over 20 years, has trained and coached and guided project managers to become extraordinary leaders and exceptional communicators. She now runs the Academy for Leadership Communication, where she helps individuals and organizations make critical changes in their behavior, mindset, and skills by empowering peak performance through communication, collaboration, and innovation. Welcome, Brenda. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing wonderfully, thank you. I'm excited to be here. Good morning, everybody.
All right, ladies. So with that said, I'll let you guys take it away.
All righty, Diane, you have anything you want to say, or do you want me to take off with it?
You take off there, young lady. I'm here for support. I can put my feet up on the table. I'm going to let you work.
Well, I'm going to try to rock and roll through the first few slides as quickly as possible, because this is part 2 and I'm doing a little recap. So give me a little time to get rolling, and then we'll slow down a little bit and pause and have some interaction and take some questions. So here we go. For those of you that haven't heard, I'm from Rhode Island, where the loud Italians and the crazy Irish people live. And it's one of the things that have been the driving, motivating factor for me to become emotionally intelligent. I grew up with very little. And so it's really a mission of mine to master this. And it's also a journey of self-discovery for myself, as well as the people I work with and the people I speak to and teach on emotional intelligence. It is fascinating how it shows up in so many facets of our lives and how important it is to having success and happiness. Today we're going to talk about business emotional intelligence in 8 crucial areas specifically focused on your emotions, your behaviors, and how successful you are in the business world, a big part of today's webinar is focused on creating more self-awareness. I'm going to pose a lot of questions and give you some exercises and activities that you can do on your own to continue this journey. What I love about the business emotional intelligence is it's very targeted and very specific to being successful in the business world and being a great leader. That's what we're going to focus on today. So I want to ask you, what is the next level of your greatness? Where do you want to go next in your career? And what is that one or two things that could be keeping you back? Think about that as we go through today's webinar. And my goal is that you can find and pinpoint one or two areas that you want to focus on and start paying more attention to that can help you be more successful in your relationships and the way you lead and inspire others. There's only so much I can share in the 1 hour, and I always struggle with this. Diane knows it well, because I always have so many slides. She's like, you can never get through all those. I always want to share as much as I possibly can with all of you so that you can really have some tangible takeaways and some skills to help up your game. And so I am sharing this program with you as a gift. I have a new program coming out. It was supposed to be released a couple weeks ago. I'm a little behind schedule, but it will be coming out in the next week or so. And it's a way for you to continue this journey after the webinar. So go ahead and download my book when I send it to you, and enjoy the weekly articles I send out, which focus on tips, tools, and techniques on how to be a better communicator and a better leader. So for those of you that were on part 1 webinar, what did you notice about you and others during the past 2 weeks? If you can type your answers into the chat box, in a few moments I'm going to have Diane share those with me, and then we will go ahead and see if I can answer any questions that are related to that, or just comment on some of the things that you've experienced or recognized. So please share your info on that. Emotional intelligence. It's the ability to understand how your emotions affect your behavior, and most importantly, do something with that information. And what's really interesting is it's easy to talk about emotional intelligence, and it's simple to understand the concept, but it's difficult to do something about it. Why is that? Because sometimes when we need our emotional intelligence, it's when we're the most upset, the most frustrated, and sometimes angry. And that's when it's hard to tap into our emotional intelligence. So it can get the best of us. I know that.
Can I give you an example, Brenda?
Sure.
Please go ahead and put yourself on mute real quick. I had a person that on the other line, she was one of those individuals that doesn't stop talking, and you can't get a word in edgewise. And it takes all the power, in myself to not say, hey, can you just be quiet for a minute and listen? How do you respond? It was like she was just irritated because it's here. The fact that people were getting irritated on the other line because she just wouldn't shut up. So sometimes it's like, you want to just kind of lash out at somebody, but that's not the right thing to do. It might be a learning opportunity for that person. Maybe they just didn't understand who was on the call with them. But that was one that hit me just recently. My emotions were like, oh.
Well, that's a good trigger to recognize. When I'm working with my clients, I actually have a whole exercise we do around triggers and hot buttons. And so that's a trigger. And it will happen again because that's going to come up in meetings, and certain people just have those habits. So being consciously aware, so next time you can just take that deep breath and respond in a way where you don't let it get you irritated. That's really the goal behind all of the work that I do and I share and I help people with, is to get to a point where we don't let that push our buttons. But thanks for sharing that, because that's a great little example of how the little things can make such a big difference. Those things can set us off in a tailspin sometimes if they happen over and over again, or there's a lot of that happening. We get out of our comfort zone and it starts to annoy us. So the behaviors in the workplace are focused in the business EQ world on 8 key areas. It's a practical approach to looking at how we behave in the workplace. Many times we'll say, hey, I got to work with this difficult person. And we'll label them, some people give them names, and we start thinking that person's difficult to work with. But very seldom do we pause and take a moment to understand why they're difficult. And that's what today is going to share with you, some ideas to understand your emotions, your comfort zone, what causes people to be difficult. And the comfort zone is directly related to that. When we're out of our comfort zone, we start reacting to it. And for many of us, our comfort zone is very different. What makes me uncomfortable might not make Diane uncomfortable, and vice versa. So understanding your own comfort zone and the people you work with is important. One of the exercises I do in my workshops, and this goes a lot deeper than what I'll share now, but here's 1 or 2 things you can start doing immediately. Assess yourself and when you are out of your comfort zone. What is that makes you uncomfortable, and how do you react to it? And then look at the people you're working with. For many project managers that I'm working with, they're working on mission-critical projects. And the people they're working with are doing something new for the first time. It puts them out of their comfort zone. So when they seem like they're being difficult, they might just be reacting to feeling uncomfortable. And if you shift your thinking around that and start to understand them a little bit more, you can take a new approach in how you speak with them and approach them. And it will change the dynamics of your relationships. I see it happen over and over again. So what we're going to do today is talk about the 8 key areas to look at and how they can affect your daily relationships with people and how you lead, inspire, manage, and get results in your life. So the first one I spoke about briefly last week, decisiveness. People that are on the far right side of the scale, and this is an assessment that you can take that really gives you a true indication of where you are, and it's an eye-opener. Even I learned some things about myself during this process. And so on the far right, you're going to love to be in control. You need to make the decision. You have a drive to get those decisions made and move forward in your projects, and you're really passionate and excited about it. Now, people on the far left side are comfortable just taking the lead from others, and they want to evaluate their options and take their time. They're a little more risk adverse. So they're out of their comfort zone if they're being pushed to make quick decisions. And so my question for you to ponder is, how does the right side make you successful, but can also make you unsuccessful? As you would expect, many great leaders are on the far right side of decisiveness. They take control, they take the lead, they get results. And many of the project managers that I work with are on the far right side because they have the drive to bring that project, in time, on schedule, within budget, and that's what makes them good at being a project manager. But it's also one of the things that could be causing them some frustration and some conflict and challenges if people are on the far left side and you have to work with them. So the first step is to be aware. Where do you show up on the scale, and how is it affecting your relationships and your performance? So think about that. Write that down. It's one of the things you can journal around and observe during the next few weeks. Then we talk about motivation. Now, motivations can be really great. People that are high energy and passionate, they have drive and enthusiasm, and they're excited to drive things forward. So people that are that way are on the far right side. Then you have some people that are more methodical. They like to be realistic and cautious. They like to take their time, and they might be more on the left side. How do you view others at the opposite end of the scale from you? And when I get a group of people, go ahead, Diane.
Well, we got one comment out here that applies to this one, I think. The comment is from Tom, who says, I have a manager who stands on his soapbox and keeps repeating himself. Even though we are all behind the goal we have focused on, they are just not achievable due to lack of resources.
Okay, so she's saying she has a manager on the soapbox who keeps repeating himself and that what he's saying is not possible?
Yes. They're saying because of resources.
Okay, because of resources. All right.
So you have somebody on one end here with the motivation, and then the team sitting here saying, it may not be that realistic.
Well, that's true, and that's a situation. What we'll do is let's hold off on that till we get to the end, and if we have time, I will address it, because that's a deep conversation that I'd like to go into if we can. Otherwise, whoever sent that comment in, I'm more than open to talk with you one-on-one and share some ideas, do a little 20-minute free consultation with you on how to approach that. So, influencing, the drive to influence others and persuade them. Okay, on the far right side, you want to affect the outcome. You want to take the lead and you're comfortable with that. And now, the key word here is you have the drive. You may not be good at it. You may not be effective, but you have the drive. Now, the person on the far right side likes receiving ideas and direction rather than influencing and making an impact. Now, mind you, there's pros and cons. There's no right or wrong here. Sometimes you need to be on the left. Sometimes the right might be more effective. Depends on your role and what you do. But when do you need to influence? Most of us at one point in our lives need to influence in one way or another. As a project manager, I know you need to influence. I work with a lot of project managers and I coach them on how to influence. So I was working with someone recently. She's building a PMO office. And in that PMO, she has a lot of people. It's a new company, so it's a brand new PMO. And everybody's moving fast and furiously. And they're not used to a lot of process. And so they are not all that excited about filling out forms and change requests, etc. So when you have to learn to influence them, being on the far right side is a great approach. But learning how to do it effectively, learning how to sell them on the benefit. Because if someone's low on the motivation side to follow the PMO structure, you have to take a unique approach. Finding out what's of interest to them. How can you sell them on the value? Adaptability is a big one. In today's ever-changing world that we live in, companies are changing and shifting direction and paths all the time. It's become a real crucial need to be adaptable. Now, people on the far left like stability. They like process and systems. And they think through procedures. When things are moving too fast for them, it can cause them to get out of their comfort zone. And they can start reacting emotionally, which shows up in their behavior. Now, people that are on the far right, they love that change. They love new ideas and approaches. They're creative. They thrive in that environment. And I told you earlier that I learned something about myself taking this assessment. I would have thought I would be on the far right because I'm a mover and a shaker and I love new things and new ideas. But there's a certain part of me in the workplace that likes to have some clarity, a system, a process, a repeatable process. I was on a webinar a few weeks ago and they had all these documents they were pulling up and the page numbers didn't match and the PowerPoint wasn't working right and the technology was acting up. And my head was in a spin. I just couldn't find where they were in this presentation. It was a training program. And I got frustrated. I was so busy trying to find the right document that I couldn't even hear what the guy was saying anymore. I couldn't even focus. Very important to pay attention to that on your team. Are they real clear? Do they need more clarity? And if so, what can you do to help them? And if you are on the far left side working in a fast-changing environment, what can you do differently to learn to be more flexible and adaptable? So I think I just answered this question. It can cause some frustration and some confusion. Empathy is a big one. This is one of the biggest ones, the biggest areas to focus on that can really change the game in your relationships. What's fascinating is when you combine and blend the different areas. Some people are really excited and motivated and passionate to drive things forward, and they love making decisions and they take pride in getting their work done, but they might have low empathy. So they're not that concerned about other people's feelings or what's going on for them. I was working with a client, a project manager, this past week, and he said, thank goodness I've been doing this program and I took a different approach this week, because I had 3 people that I'm trying to get deliverables from that weren't delivering. And a year ago I would have approached them in a very kind of controlling, demanding way. And today he went in there asking more open-ended questions, doing active listening, and he used his empathy because he found out 3 people on the team had just had deaths occur in one way or another. And he said, if I'd taken that old approach, I would have really alienated those people. So he had to take a step back from his motivation and slow his thinking process down and take a moment to apply the empathy. And what a difference it makes in his relationships. He built relationships from doing that. So ask yourself this question. How does lack of empathy or too much of it hold you back? Where do you need to show more of it? It goes a long way in your relationships. Sometimes it's difficult for some of us to stop and apply that when we have results that we're focused on. So here's the before and after story. The same person I just spoke to before, he was all about being driven to deliver the results. High on motivation, high on decisiveness, really passionate, focused on the goal, takes pride in his accomplishments. But to others, he was coming across emotionally detached. He had frustration with the people that weren't delivering. And then that led to judgment and control. He got to a point where he didn't even listen anymore, and the conflict rose. And it caused him stress. When he started applying business emotional intelligence, he became more accepting. His relationships got stronger. He's taken a new approach where he helps others so that he can build stronger relationships and inspire and mentor them. And because of all that help and support and empathy, he's attracting them into his life to help him. So when he has things that he needs delivered, they get them to him quickly. And he said, you know, I'm no longer chasing people around and dealing with as much conflict. I have people coming to me. And that's because I've listened, I've understood, and I've built better, joyful relationships with them. I look at this before and after. It's pretty amazing how this can make such a difference, not only in your business, but in your life. So conscientiousness is the need to have structure, the need to have a plan. People on the far right, they like structure. It needs to be reliable and consistent. They also want to behave in a way that is acceptable to everybody else. Now, someone on the far left loves spontaneity, independence, freedom. It's crazy what happens when those two are working together. Which side of the scale are you on? And how is it affecting your relationships? Or your ability to do your job? Because we don't always have a plan. And there's not always defined structure.
Hey, Brenda.
Yeah.
For some reason we keep getting this echo, but I like this one because usually, well, not usually, I've seen project managers on both ends of the scale. Those that are very structured and don't like having any variation, and then those that are willing to kind of start with like an empty slate. And I think there's two different kinds of people. So I don't think on this one, as a project manager, it's kind of, you may prefer one or the other, and there's value in one or the other side. So here's the example. You know, lots of small, very low-cost projects, You might need somebody on the right-hand side that's very structured, follow a process, et cetera, et cetera. You know, that makes for efficiency. On the other hand, when you have a unique situation that requires some unknowns to have to kind of be built and decided upon and everything else, that's more on that left-hand side where you might not have a plan to start, but you're going to work toward a plan. So I see project managers with both ends of that spectrum, and I'd be curious to see what everybody thinks there in their own roles.
Absolutely.
Ronnie said that he's on the right-hand side.
Yeah, and that's a good comment, Diane, because it doesn't matter which side of the scale you're on. There's no good or bad, right or wrong here. This is an opportunity for you to discover where you show up and how it affects your performance, how it affects your emotions when you're in a situation where you have to interface or be on a project that is at the opposite end of the scale, so that you can decide maybe there's a way I could shift my approach or my thinking so that I don't get as emotional. Because many people that don't have a plan, they get a little out of whack. They get a little stressed out. And it's so funny because I always thought I was the person that liked independence and freedom, and I like spontaneity. But I realized as I go through this process, when I go on vacation, my calendar's booked up just like it is at home. I got this tour booked and this booked, and we look at our schedule and it's like go, go, go. I have to relax when I come home from vacation. So you really learn a lot about yourself as you go through this process and assess yourself and discover how is it affecting my life, my relationships, and my performance. And then the people that I'm working with, if you can discover where they're at on this scale, you can understand where they're coming from. And for example, if you are the one who loves structure and you're working with someone who likes freedom and spontaneity, there's got to be some wiggle room for both of you. And if you learn to communicate in a different way where you understand each other's needs and you help each other be a little more comfortable, it will change the relationship. And stress resilience is different for all of us. The ability to manage the pressure, which is ever growing in today's workplace. So how is stress affecting the way you interact with people? I bring this back to the comfort zone. When are you out of your comfort zone? And how do you respond? Do you retreat and avoid? Do you voice your opinion and sometimes in a way you wish you had done differently? Are you inwardly frustrated and taking that stress home each day? When you understand where that stress is coming from, you can start shifting and changing how you think and approach those situations. So where do you score yourself? In these 8 key areas. When I took this assessment, it was different than what I thought it would be. It was a real eye-opener. So just think about that. As you go through the next week, look at those 8 key areas and say, how would I score myself on each of these scales? And ask yourself the questions that I posed today. Before I move into the leadership styles, Diane, do you have any good comments or questions that I can answer?
Can you hear me, Brenda?
Yes.
Okay. Here's one from Donna, and it's more of a comment and just something maybe to discuss. Donna says, I notice that I get defensive when I'm outside my comfort zone. Same thing happens with my customers. By being aware, I was able to take a deep breath, lower my voice, and calmly state the situation. It caused everything to de-escalate rather than escalate as it usually did in the past.
Excellent. So she's recognized that trigger point and she's able to hit the pause button. Then she's working on her emotional intelligence. Congratulations, Donna. That's what it's all about.
And here's another one from Patricia. I have noticed some styles do not ask clarifying questions and or start in the middle of a topic without bringing everyone up to date. It's hard to challenge them on this without them getting frustrated with you. So I think what Patricia's saying here is, some people just make a lot of assumptions, and when others need to kind of get up to speed on the discussion.
Well, we make, assumptions show up a lot in the workplace. I talk about the energy blocks, which are limiting beliefs, assumptions, interpretations, and the gremlin, the inner critic. They're all in the book that I'm sending you if you want to learn about them in more depth, and they make a huge difference. And so sometimes just getting that person aside and having a conversation with them, maybe have lunch or coffee. As a leader, it's our responsibility to help mentor and inspire others. And talk to them about clarifying questions and seeing if people are on the right page. And does everybody buy in to where you're at? And does anybody have any questions? So if that person could just pause for a moment to take that approach, it would help him to be more successful on his mission. So if you're willing to mentor that person, give that a try.
Yeah, and one of the things I get frustrated with in talking with senior management, and it's one of those things that I think just takes a lot of practice, is similar to what Tim said earlier. Sometimes the goal everybody agrees with, but getting everybody to execute on the things that need to be executed on is really hard, because basically you're changing people's behavior and you're trying to change their habits and you're trying to get buy-in, and that all takes time. And sometimes I get frustrated when senior management people say, well, we need to change the procedure today. And A, you got to communicate it to people. B, you got to make sure that they understand what they're supposed to do, and that takes time. And then reinforce it and things like that, and things just don't turn that fast. So it's just, that's one of those things that I think we all can use our emotional intelligence as we grow into the organization, because I think a lot of senior management even struggle with it, because they think that if what I say is what's going to happen.
Well, I agree. Communication is really the key. I've been working with the project manager, and he's working on changing the culture inside his company. And so we've been brainstorming around different approaches he can take to educate people. And so there's a lot of different ways you can do that with senior management to start helping to shift their thinking and their culture. Find out what's important to them, and start sharing information that will help them with their goal. So if they want things done quicker, if you can work on getting people to be more adaptable and to be more flexible and be willing to step out of their comfort zone, that will help change the behavior. So there's a lot of information you can share and different approaches you can take to help change the culture and the dynamics of how people think. And that's being proactive versus reactive. And so one of my clients has been doing that. He's starting book clubs. He's having individual meetings with those managers and directors, offering to help and support their groups in different ways. He's sharing articles and white papers. And sometimes we have to educate the people we work with. And it really comes down to that. And what you just said ties into this slide here on leadership styles. Some people have the commanding leadership style, right? Just do it my way and get it done. And it's not always the best approach. Matter of fact, the most effective leaders can understand all of these areas of leadership and when they are most effective to utilize. And I'm actually going to be speaking on these in more depth in one of my upcoming webinars, so just watch for the invites. But an important piece of this is not only to adapt to the 8 behavioral clusters I just shared, and to be able to modify your approach and recognize others and where they stand. Same thing in leadership. When is it best to coach someone and mentor them versus be democratic? So think about that. Which leadership style do you use? And how often do you use it? How comfortable? And when is the best time to use it? Some great questions to think about and ponder. So I'll be doing a deeper dive in that, but I wanted to bring it to your attention because it ties into the assessment results. And I wanted to just share with you a little example of what happens on the assessment scale if you are a visionary leader. Now notice a visionary, they're setting the vision. You know, they're motivating and driving the people towards a vision. So they're great on making decisions, high on motivation, they love influencing, they're adapting to change, but they're low on they're on the left side of conscientiousness. So they don't need as much structure and as many rules, which is great if you're creating that vision. But if you have a team of people, like you just mentioned, Diane, that aren't comfortable with that change, and you got to change their behavior and get their buy-in, they might be more comfortable with the old way of doing things. What do you need to do to speak to those people to get them to follow you with your vision? So recognizing who's your audience. Then when you have the leadership style of a visionary, did I just do that backwards? Or did I put the same slide twice? I put the same slide twice. I don't know how that happened.
No, you actually, if you just have the title twice. This one says coaching.
Okay, good, thanks. So I was like, how'd that happen? So when you have the coaching style, which is what I do a lot of, and this is really fascinating stuff when you blend the dynamics of the different areas. You're on the left side of decisiveness. It means you don't have to make the quick, fast decisions. Because when you're coaching somebody, you're mentoring them, you're guiding them, you're giving them time to think through things and work through things. There might be some training involved. You're helping them learn and discover. And you're willing to take a step back and let them take their journey and their path on that. You're not like driving your own decisions. You're guiding them to their decisions so that they buy in. And so if you want somebody's buy-in and you want to take a team of people and have them learn and grow, especially with a lot of the younger generations coming into the workplace, we need to mentor them, coach them, get them up to speed where they can make decisions on their own, not be told what to do. So when you start looking at the nuances and dynamics between the different levels here, it really is fascinating, and it helps you communicate more effectively. If you can take someone on your team that you're having a hard time with, and you pinpoint where they're at on these scales, you can determine how you need to modify your approach. And let me take the word need back, because nobody needs to do anything. But, but let me just encourage you that if you modify your approach, you will get a better result. Here's the commanding style. They're not very adaptable. No empathy. My way or the highway. Just do what I say. And sometimes you have to use this leadership style. There's pros and cons to each one. But more often than not, this is the least respected and received leadership style, the commanding style. It's not how you build it.
However, they have very high influencing skills.
They do.
So this is when I looked at this, Brenda, I said, you know, I'm a little bit like this, a little bit, because personally, I generally don't have a whole lot of empathy. I try. That's where I have to work. but I feel I have very strong influencing skills, and it's about explaining things to people and, you know, getting them to understand where we're coming from and why. You know, so, but I also have high adaptability, so maybe that's not so true. But I kind of chuckled when I saw this.
No, but it's funny because empathy is a key one for everybody. Some people might have too much empathy and it doesn't serve them. Others, like the people that are high on the decisiveness, motivation, and influencing, we don't have enough empathy, and what happens is it can alienate people. It can cause conflict. And so I have to stop myself sometimes to get off my mission of result, and take a step back and have a little empathy. I mean, I had my assistant. I totally agree with you. What's that?
I said I totally agree with you. I mean, it's one of the things that I struggle with too. It's like I know I need to and I want to, But it's funny, even in your own family, you can have very different styles.
Oh, absolutely. And our family gets to see our real true self. That's where it really shows up. So if we can learn to apply empathy at home, we can definitely do it in the workplace. But I'll tell you this, it's one of the things I've been focused on with my clients, and every single person that applies empathy, their relationships completely change. It's a huge benefit. So to stop yourself and say, here's a time where I should apply some empathy and make a conscious choice to do it, you will start seeing the dynamics of your relationships change. It's very important. So how do you use this to build a successful team? I have a program where you can bring a whole team together and you start looking at the dynamics of how you all think and show up. And if you notice here, you see that on this diagram, you see the yellow lines from Carol to Steve to Edward. They all have a little bit of effort to work together. And then when Carol works with Edward, there's no effort at all. And a lot of the times that's because her and Edward are on similar sides of the scale. They think alike. They're on the same wavelength. So when you start looking at all of the dynamics of a team, you're never going to have everybody on the same side or the same place on that scale. So if you want to be a more effective leader and a more effective teammate, which will give you more success and less stress, starting to really recognize who are those people around me, what are my relationships like, and what can I do differently to work with them in a more effective way. So this is really resonating with leaders around the world because it's a straightforward way to approach this, and it sets a benchmark.
For a second, Brenda, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's Abdus Samed just commented in here, and before you go on to a different topic, and we were talking about the commanding leader. His comment was, when do you think we need to be more commanding? He says, I struggle a lot to state my ideas sometimes.
The commanding leadership style needs to be in place when you need a fast, immediate decision, and it's crucial. Like, there's no way, it has to happen now. And sometimes you can't go out and get a consensus. You can't get a buy-in and get an emotional buy-in from everybody. That takes too long. So there'll be times where things just really have to happen right this minute. And if you got 10 people that aren't on the same page, someone needs to step up and take control. So there are times to do that, but it's also the least effective way to build a team long-term that will be loyal, that will follow you.
Fair enough. Great. Thank you, Brenda.
Okay, so this is a game changer. There's a whole program that goes with it where you can take your own assessment, you can do team workshops, there's a coaching program that goes with it that I offer and provide. If you're interested, you can reach out to me. There's global clients around the world that are on the bandwagon using this. This program I selected out of all of the emotional intelligence programs. I've taken every assessment, or I'd say the 4 or 5 major emotional intelligence assessments on the market. And I found that when I got my report back, it was 25, 30 pages. It was so robust and so complicated, I didn't see my clients sitting down to take the time to really decipher what do I need to do differently that will directly impact my ROI. So when this came along, I said this is really succinct, to the point, and targeted in the business world. It's easy to understand, it makes sense, and you can see fast, quick changes. So I just got certified in it because I absolutely think it's the best program on the market when it comes to business emotional intelligence. So if you have any stress going on in your life, ask yourself, how does it directly relate to some of these communication issues, my emotions and my behaviors? What do I need to change? A lot of people resist change. I love this little quote I found. One reason people resist change is because they focus on what they have to give up instead of what they have to gain. I was talking to a leader the other day, and he's like, I'm not going to change. And I'm like, he's going to suffer the consequences, because you can't expect people around you to change. If you want to have less stress and less aggravation and less frustration, and you want to have better relationships and more progress, we're the ones that need to change. But I promise you this, if you start to change, everything around you will change automatically. So what action do you want to change? I asked you a lot of questions today. I've left you with some things to ponder. You can go through this exercise, look through those scales, assess your team, and figure out what you want to do differently. And for those of you that really want to make a change in how you communicate and how you lead others, I'm having a workshop on September 17th. There's 2 ticket options. One is just to come and enjoy the workshop. 2 is to take the emotional intelligence assessment ahead of time, have a one-on-one coaching session, understand where you really show up on the scale. And then in the workshop, you're going to learn more about emotional intelligence and how to directly apply this in your business world to be more successful in your relationships and your leadership. And for people that want to bring a team, I'm offering a special discount of 10% off for 5 people or more. So feel free to reach out to me. I would love to have you join me in this workshop. It's going to be engaging with a lot of exercises and activities. You will walk away with tangible skills that you can apply immediately. So what I want to do is invite you to that. Come and join me. You can go ahead and go to my website to register. Hope to see you all there. And now let's go to questions. Now I did pretty good because that was a whole lot more slides than I was supposed to have. And so I did want to get through it quickly so we could do questions, Q&A, and have some cool conversations around this. So now we have about 10 minutes, Diane.
Yep. And so if I want to invite everybody to continue to ask some questions. I got 1 or 2 here that I haven't asked yet as we've been going through. But please definitely ask some questions, situations that you'd like to discuss. The one that I want to start with is the comment was, it's hard, but you have to realize that you must be the first one to swallow your ego and to take the first step to start the de-escalation process. What's your thoughts on that? I mean, is it really about swallowing your own ego?
I love that comment. Because I will say this, emotional intelligence is something you have to work at. So when you say it's hard, that on my 7 levels of effective thinking, it's a lower level of thinking that it's hard. So if we tell ourselves something is hard, it's going to be hard. With that being said, it takes practice. It takes paying some attention to, it takes doing the work. A lot of the things I've mentioned. And so it's not really hard if you want to do it. It's easy to start the process. Swallowing the ego is, again, it's a comment which would be at the lower level of thinking, which is more, you know, I have to give up something to gain something. Versus, if you're thinking at one of my higher levels of thoughts, it would be more about acceptance, that we're all different. We're all human beings. We all have different mindsets and different ways that we show up in the world. And when you look at a comfort zone, and what causes one person to be uncomfortable, and you look at that with empathy and you start feeling for them, it makes a difference in how you approach this. It's not about your ego anymore. It's about helping others. It's about caring about others. It's about understanding people and how we're all connected. And we just have different ways of thinking and different comfort zones. And so the ego is a big thing for many of us. I see it all the time. And it's one of my questions in my program is I have people look at, is your ego in the way? Are you taking things personally? I have my clients ask themselves that every day. Why am I responding this way? Is it my ego talking? Why am I fighting back? Why did I just interpret that in a negative way? I just had this conversation last night with a client who said, my wife and I were having this conversation and it really annoys me when she asks me a million questions. I said, why does that annoy you? What's your interpretation? And after several questions, we finally peeled back the layers of the onion and we realized his ego gets in the way. He feels like she's questioning his capability. And that happens a lot in the workplace where we feel people are questioning us or we're guarded and we have to protect our position. We have to let people think that we know it all. You know, I see and hear a lot of that in the workplace. But can you all imagine if we had a workplace, an environment where people would be open, where we could all admit we're not perfect, that we've all made mistakes, and how can we understand each other and learn from each other and help and support each other in a more effective way? The world would be a happier place. And that's really a different way of looking at this. And if you change your perspective and how you look at it, it'll be a more joyful journey that'll change your life.
Awesome. Got a couple more questions, Brenda. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. If the little grid that you had, like the 8 components, Apsumed basically said, what side would a great leader, project manager be on those scales? I mean, is there for each of those 8 items, is there a particular side that the project manager should be striving for?
And that's a very good question. So let me answer that in a couple ways. A lot of times the side in the area we're on that scale directly reflects our personality. So if you're an introvert and you're like maybe an engineer, many introvert engineers like details, facts, scientists, statistics, details. I need time to think about it. I need my data. That's kind of who you are. So it's not going to necessarily change who you are. What you can do is adapt to the situation or the project. So I was just meeting with someone yesterday, a client of mine, a business client I'm doing workshops for, and he said, most people think that I'm an extrovert because I'm the director. He said, but I'm really an introvert. I have to get out of my comfort zone to do the things I do, and I have to make the effort to speak in front of a room. It's not where I'm comfortable. So he doesn't have high motivation to go speak in front of a room, but I got him up at my last workshop and had him give an open and vulnerable speech, and he did a wonderful job. He really connected with people. So there's really no right or wrong here. It's looking at the situation. If you have a mission-critical project and you need to motivate people, then of course you want to tap into the right side of motivation. But you also want to understand what will motivate those people. And for each person you work with, that's a different answer. Most of us will motivate someone the way we get motivated, or the only approach that we know to take. Sometimes it's as simple as asking that person, what motivates you? So there's really no right or wrong answer as far as like overall this is where you need to be. It's looking at the situation, the people you're encountering, the projects you're on, and looking at where you're at, how is that working for you, and where do you think you could shift to that would get a better result?
Awesome. Awesome. I guess one last question before we have to go here, and this one's from George. What questions would you recommend for a one-on-one with team members to improve empathy?
Well, one of the things I'd recommend if you really want to change culture and improve empathy is to set up a book club and pick a great book where you can all get together and build some relationships, have some great inspirational conversations, and talk about empathy. And what is the value around empathy? You know, this is a conversation that also works well one-on-one. Have coffee, have lunches, connect with people. Ask them if they even know what empathy is. It's fascinating how many people aren't even really that familiar with empathy. Empathy is where you walk in somebody else's shoes and you truly understand where they're coming from. And it's not a natural instinct for us because we all have our beliefs and our ideas of what's right or wrong. And to have empathy, you've got to put that aside. And you've got to understand with active listening, an open mind and an open heart where other people are coming from. Why do they feel that way? What's happening for them? And you have to listen to them. And when you do that, it changes the game. So most importantly, the value of empathy, the difference it can make in a team, is a game changer. So I'd recommend you study empathy a little bit, maybe find a great white paper. I might even have some in my leadership program coming out, and share it with people. Talk about empathy. Start the conversation around it. Ask them what they think about empathy, where they would score on the scale of empathy, and how important they think it is, how it could affect their success and their relationships. I promise you it's a game changer. When you use it and you apply it, it changes the game inside cultures, organizations. And my client the other day said to me, I had an outer body experience this week by having empathy and connecting with people at a level I've never connected before. And so it was pretty amazing to hear the change that it's made in his life, caring about others. That's my answer.
Excellent. All right. Well, this has been great, Brenda. I think everybody's gotten some great input from you. And again, I totally recommend that people reach out to you, and if they have very specific questions, you've provided your email address and contact information. So Denise, I think it's back to you, or is next slide me? Where are we? Click forward, Brenda, just real quick. There we go.
I got this. All right, guys. So yes, thank you, Brenda and Diane, for that great presentation and a lot of great questions too. So upcoming webinars next week, we're going to have a leadership webinar with Brenda. It's understanding the psychology behind building high-performance teams. That's on August 3rd at 8 a.m. Pacific Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. If you have not already registered for that, I encourage you to go into our website and do so after this webinar. And we do have a special promotion from Core Performance Concepts. If you'd like to continue improving your project management skills, they're offering a 10% discount for online courses. So I will copy and paste that link into your chat box. So feel free to check them out today. And as far as your PDUs, you will automatically receive your PDU certificate via email towards the end of today. If you have any questions, comments, feedback, anything else I can help you with, please feel free to reach me at denise.rodriguez@projectinsight.com. You will earn 1 PDU per webinar attended. To register your PDU, log into PMI and log in as a PMI member, select course or training, and fill out all the information below, which will also be available in your PDU certificate. For those on social media, I'd like to invite you to follow, like, and subscribe to our social media channels. Our handle on Twitter is @ProjectInsight. You can also find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube for the latest in PI news. In our Project Insight community, you'll find many recorded videos and webinars for you to watch and learn from. You can sign up for your next project management training, leadership, IT methodology, and agile webinars, as well as product training. They are all free of charge, so go ahead and check out our webinar calendar and register for as many as you'd like. And until then, we'd like to thank Brenda once again and Diane for today's session. And of course, we'd like to thank our audience as usual for your time. You guys are great. You're awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. And we hope to see you next time.
Thank you.
Great.
Have a wonderful day.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.